So it's interesting because you were like, hell yeah. When I got approached to do the first podcast that I was on, I was like, hell no. Because I didn't feel like I knew what I was going to do or knew what I was going to say or knew who I was going to talk to.
I didn't either.
And any of that. So it's great that you were like, yeah, let's jump into the deep end. Not everybody sitting out here is ready to jump into the deep end. But just know that you can trust the process. And that first episode might not be the best episode, but it's going to be your favorite episode because it was the first episode that started you on a journey that can dramatically impact your life and impact your business. It literally is starting a podcast in 2013 that was one of probably the 3 definitive indicators of where I am today. And I don't necessarily mean sitting on this stage, but who I am as a human being and how I show up. So trust yourself and trust the process is what I'm going to say. Now, a lot of this first part was kind of about us and how we got started into this. But I want to dive into, and Kerry, I'm going to start with you, and then maybe Matt, you can go second. We'll see. 500 characters, brother. So when you sit down in front of a mic to do a podcast episode, what are you thinking about?
Did I leave the iron on? I do 4 shows right now. I work for a company called AppFire that's in the business of Atlassian apps. And before I worked at AppFire, I knew nothing about Atlassian or apps. So a great way to get indoctrinated is to talk to people who do. So now I do 4 shows in 4 different categories. Every episode is 10 minutes, and it's very focused on a single question. Like, what is the XY problem and how do I solve it? What is probabilistic forecasting and what's it good for? And I know very little about it. I'm not saying absolutely nothing, but very little about it. I know about the speaker, and so in the minutes before we start, I'm thinking about warming up the speaker because they typically haven't met me before. And the better our rapport is, the more that warmth will translate into the finished product and make it better. They know the topic. All I have to do is make them comfortable. I don't need to know anything. I just need to showcase their knowledge and expertise. And so that's what I'm thinking about in the minutes before I record.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to unpack from that I think the audience should take away. 1, you don't have to be the expert to be the host of the show. 2, you said 10 minutes, so it doesn't have to be 30 minutes or an hour like you might see on some shows. Like, whatever it is that you think your audience needs is what you might want to try to create and leverage that. What are you thinking about, Matt? I'm scared right now. What do you think about when you step in front of a mic?
Well, usually I've done some prep work. What you just said, Kerry, like when I started the cloud computing or hosting the cloud computing podcast, I did not know what cloud computing was. But I dove into it and I educated myself. I got to the point where I could ask a good question, but I could not evaluate the answer.
I gotcha.
So, I couldn't. They'd be, great question.
I don't even pretend. I was like,
I
what
have
is
no
that?
idea. So there may be a lesson there. So on some level, I'm just thinking about. I usually have 4 or 5 questions, and I know I'm going to ask follow-up questions and clarifying questions because sometimes people they need a little coaxing to get things moving. The other thing I do think about is the audience, and one of the things that Anne had pointed out, that she said one of the things she appreciated about my method is I would ask stupid questions, like really basic questions. And my example is, do you guys remember Guy Kawasaki?
Yep.
So I interviewed Guy Kawasaki. At the time, I think Guy was trying to get a job at Google. So he was focusing on Google. Everything he wrote about was Google. He went to Google's this, that, and the other thing. He wrote a book about Google Plus. I don't know if I'm not... Google Plus was a thing. Didn't worry about it.
They might not
ask your parents.
Ask your parents.
They might be too young.
It was literally, and so he was like talking about Google Plus and all these things you could do with Google Plus, and I was just like, dude, can you just explain to me what you're talking about? Because I don't know what Google Plus really is or does, and I don't do anything on it, and I have no idea. In fact, now it's vanished. But so one of the things I do think about is I'm the representative to the audience on this podcast. I've got to ask the question, it's as much as obviously this is about me. The podcasts that I've done were never about me because they were all about how can I ask a question that I think my audience is going to want to hear. And the kind of, and sometimes they're the very obvious questions like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Or can we take one step back to kind of understand context?